The murder charges against Derek Chauvin, the Minneapolis police officer who had his knee on George Floyd's neck for up to 9 minutes. That murder charge was upgraded from third-degree murder to second-degree murder. The other three officers who stood by while Derek Chauvin did what he did, they have all been arrested and charged as well. It's going to be interesting to see if that has had any impact on the worldwide protests and reaction to what happened in Minneapolis with just 9 or so short days ago. I hope it does. I also, of course, worry because I'm a perennial worrier. Obviously, you have to have some confidence that the prosecutors lay out the case in a way that is compelling and convincing, because if there's an acquittal, boy, are we going to be in a lot of trouble again as a nation. And really, at this point, around the world. Have you seen the protests in Greece and in the UK, in France and Israel? This has become a worldwide response. Who would have ever thought that 8 minutes of video depicting a brutal, brutal act of what the authorities in Minnesota are convinced is sheer criminal murder by a police officer would turn into a worldwide event. Now, I know people who are pained and people who are hurting and people who are afraid and people who are have anxiety. Don't think they may not be recognizing the significance of a worldwide response to something, but it'll come. I mean, that realization is going to have to set in. Never before has the world responded to something like this, and frankly, that's a good thing. I saw a news story yesterday about George Floyd's family. He had a 6-year-old girl, little daughter, beautiful little girl, and she said something that was so profound, and we ought to keep that clip, we ought to find it, we ought to play it a lot, because as awful as her father's death was, as she said with a big beaming smile, my daddy is changing the world. And it was, wow, that's big. Welcome in. We are in the ReliefFactor.com studios for a Thursday, June the 4th. Again, the rioting last night, the looting, not as bad as it has been the first few nights, thank God. As we continue to pray for God's guidance and love and grace and compassion. I don't know if this is going to subside. I don't know what's going to happen. I know there's a lot of bad actors mixed in with a whole bunch of good people who want to respond to Floyd's death. A lot of people who are stopping the rioting, stopping the protesting. I heard a local report from here in Tampa Bay, the great newsman, Roger P. Schulman. Love that guy. He always has the P in there. He's not Roger Schulman, he's Roger P. Schulman. And he had a news account of a guy who was trying to start a riot in St. Petersburg. Kept throwing objects at a gas station, trying to break windows and incite violence. And the protesters around him were having none of it. They wouldn't participate. In fact, the police got to him, and it was apparently, there were a couple of skirmishes. He punched a police dog, according to the news report. There are actually 2 cases, I guess, two men who were trying to be violent and start a riot, literally. And all the other protesters refused to participate. That matters. That matters, and that's the kind of calm and peaceful protest that America is about. Nothing wrong with it. There's a lot of negative stuff happening, and of course, we are in an election year. In a few months, we're going to make a decision about the leadership of this country on the state, on the federal level. Yesterday, one of the president's former top advisors, General Mad Dog Mattis, teed off on President Trump, accusing him of being the first president that Mattis has ever experienced in his lifetime who takes a moment like this and fails to try to unite. Is divisive. That's one of the big words that the people who don't like Donald Trump like to use. And I've been thinking a lot about it in the last few hours since I saw Reb Mattis's op-ed, his scathing editorial, I think over at The Atlantic, if I'm not mistaken. There's no question that Mattis and Trump have had major policy differences. Ask people in the room where the decisions were made about moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Israel, and ask people what General Mattis thought about that move. Now, I'm not going to smear any kind of military general, any veteran who has had an esteemed lifetime of public service. There's just no time for that, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just not. But it is fair and honest and truthful to say that General Mattis and President Trump have had major policy disagreements practically from the outset. And it is very accurate and true to say that Mattis left over policy differences, and now Mattis is trying, like so many others, to stop the President of the United States from winning. No question about any of this. All the never-Trumpers are revved up, and they feel like they've got him again. Once again, the media thinks that they've got him again. Once again, the elites and the establishment, they think they've got him again, and that they're going to crush him on November 3rd. Maybe they will. I just have this pesky little belief in the back of my head that perhaps just like in 2016, while Trump has seemingly the weight of the world on him, led by the Mattises and the Romneys and all the never-Trumpers in the media and the elites, maybe the president just has the American people in his corner. Because that's kind of how it played out in 2016. Do you remember? We're not going to know until November the 3rd. I'd honestly like to know, and I mean this, I'd like to know one thing that the president has said or done over the George Floyd death that has failed to unite or that is divisive. I've got examples all day long of what Mattis thinks is divisiveness. And I'm going to put this question out to you. I invite you to call me and give me an example of one thing the president has said or done that you consider divisive as the nation is reacting in horror to the death of George Floyd. I mean, here's maybe is this an example of what General Mattis is referring to?
The death of George Floyd on the streets of Minneapolis was a grave tragedy. It should never have happened. It has filled Americans all over the country with horror, anger, and grief.
That's divisive? I'd love to know. 1-800-655-MIKE. We got a lot to sink our teeth into today. I hope you join us. When you call 800-655-MIKE, press 1 to come on air with us. Press 2 to leave a voicemail message. You're always welcome to text us your comments to the MyPillow text line. As we continue the day-by-day reaction to millions of people literally taking to the streets over the world over the awful death of George Floyd. Let's start here with Mad Dog Mattis. And again, I have no desire to bash this retired, respected general. I'm just not. You can acknowledge that there were deep policy differences, including the embassy, that Trump and Mattis had. It really isn't a surprise to people who know General Mattis that he's lashing out now and accusing the president of a lack of unity. But let's start. Let's start with what the president has said or done over the George Floyd death that would support Mattis's position.